driving rap is life where I'm from. Where I'm from, I might play with Izzy where I'm from.
Wheat beat the chocolates, taps on my raps. She innovates after sweeter cat naps.
Oh, a nickel back of funk, a nickel back of funk. We beat to rap, what key beat to lock.
The bloom, the swoon, the sugars on your block.
Gotta roll with my nickel back of funk.
Digable Planets got it going on.
We out, we out, we out.
Digable Planets were cool like Dat, until they weren't. They had the perfect image. Jazzy, poetic, revolutionary. But what if I told you that behind the incense smoke and beat poetry, things were falling apart fast? Because the truth is, Digable Planets weren't a tight-knit trio of artistic harmony. They were a ticking time bomb of ego, industry pressure, and resentment. Ladybug Mecca all but disappeared for years. Butterfly ghosted the group to start a whole new act without even telling the others. And Doodlebug? He's still trying to tour under a name nobody remembers. So how did a Grammy-winning, culture-defining group implode before they could truly take off? And why does hip-hop barely mention them in 2025? It's time to expose what really went down with Digable Planets, because the peace, love, and jazz rap aesthetic, that was just the cover story. Let's get into it. For a lot of people, Digable Planets were the thinking person's hip-hop group. They weren't just rappers, they were poets, revolutionaries, philosophers and vintage windbreakers. Their debut single, Rebirth of Slick, Cool Like Dat, didn't just chart, it became a whole aesthetic. They dressed like Black Panthers but talked like beatniks. They name-dropped Marx and Miles Davis in the same breath. And in the early 90s, that was rare. They were placed right next to a tribe called Quest and De La Soul as the so-called alternative side of hip-hop, what the media loved to call the positive rappers. And that's where the misconception started. Everyone thought Digable Planets were united by some higher purpose, that their jazzy beats and laid-back flows came from shared ideals and deep creative harmony. But the truth? The group was assembled, not grown. They weren't childhood friends. They didn't come up together in a rap crew. They met as adults, strangers with some chemistry and a record deal on the table. And from the beginning, Ishmael Butterfly Butler was steering the whole ship. He wrote most of the first album. He had the creative vision. He even produced the beats. Ladybug Mecca and Doodlebug were talented, no doubt, but they were invited into his world. And that dynamic, it never really shifted. So while fans saw them as a three-headed jazz rap collective, the reality was closer to one mastermind and two features. And even that would have worked if the label hadn't rushed everything and the group hadn't imploded just 2 years in. But here's the thing that kept the myth alive. Digable Planets never aired their dirty laundry. No diss tracks, no public beef, no VH1 specials, just silence. So people assumed the best. Oh, they must have just gone their separate ways. Nah, that's not what happened, and what came next proves it. Digable Planets were never built to last, and honestly, they knew it. From day one, the group was a creative experiment held together with duct tape and incense. Butterfly was the architect. The beats, the concepts, the flow. It was his vision. But what happens when the guy holding the blueprint starts getting all the credit? Behind the scenes, things got tense fast. While fans were vibing to the group's cool, collective energy, there were already cracks forming. Doodlebug and Ladybug weren't just collaborators. They were also trying to carve out space in a group that wasn't really theirs. And that tension only got worse when the money and fame kicked in. Butterfly was praised as the group's creative genius. Critics loved him. The label leaned on him. And slowly but surely, he became the de facto frontman of a group that was never supposed to have a frontman. That's when the resentment started to boil. Ladybug Mecca, who was instantly iconic for her flow, her look, and her verses, wasn't just underused, she was being overlooked. She wasn't getting the same press. She wasn't being pushed as a solo star. And even though fans loved her, the industry treated her like an accessory. Meanwhile, Doodlebug was trying to flex his own creative muscles too. But the label, they weren't having it. Digable was Butterfly's group in their eyes. By the time they were recording their second album, Blowout Comb, everything was off. The vibe was darker, the beats were heavier, the lyrics were more militant, and the unity, gone. There were rumors that Butterfly barely even wanted to make the second album, but the label needed another hit, and Digable Planets were still hot. So what did they do? They rushed the project. No real promotional rollout, no real push. And when Blowout Comb didn't match the success of their debut, the label basically shrugged and said, well, that was fun while it lasted. It wasn't a breakup, it was an unraveling. And just like that, the group faded away. No farewell tour, no official announcement, just silence. But that silence, it wasn't peace, it was fallout. And if you look closer, the signs were everywhere. Let's be real, the label was never fully behind Digable Planets. Sure, they cashed in on the success of Cool Like Dat, slapped a Grammy on it, and marketed the group as this stylish, woke, jazz rap trio. But the second things got complicated, they bailed. Pendulum Records, distributed by Elektra, had no idea what to do with Digable Planets after the first album. They were seen as a novelty, quirky, poetic, and just mainstream enough to win awards, but too cerebral and political to push as chart-topping superstars. And when that second album, Blowout Comb, came out, the vibe was radically different. Gone were the breezy jazz loops and cool-headed flows. Suddenly, they were sampling The Last Poets, talking about Pan-Africanism, name-dropping Assata Shakur, and sliding Black Panther imagery into the lyrics. To the label, that wasn't a product. That was a problem. The executives didn't hear a follow-up hit. They heard a warning sign. Digable Planets were getting too radical, too black, and way too hard to control. So they did what labels do best. They stopped pushing. No big tour support, no aggressive radio rollout, no MTV spotlight, just a quiet, passive fade into the background while other safe acts got the shine. And the group noticed. They weren't stupid. Butterfly, who handled most of the production and songwriting, had been vocal in interviews about not trusting the label. Ladybug Mecca barely even appeared in press after the second album dropped. And Doodlebug? He started talking about solo work before the group even officially disbanded. It's like the label had said, "Thanks for the Grammy, now don't get too loud." And that's where the quiet collapse really started. When your label treats you like a disposable buzzword, the damage is already done. Because the truth is, Digable Planets didn't just get ignored by the industry, they got abandoned. And once the money stopped, so did the patience. But the most surprising fracture, that one didn't come from the label. It came from inside the group itself. And that story? Oh, it gets even messier. So let's talk about what really went down behind the scenes. Because the peace, love, and cool jazz energy, that was just for the cameras. While fans saw three laid-back visionaries working in harmony, the truth was way less poetic. From the jump, Butterfly was running the show. He wrote most of the lyrics. He produced the beats. He shaped the image. But here's the thing. He wasn't just the creative force. He was the face. And that didn't sit right with the others. Doodlebug, who came from Philly's underground scene, had his own voice, his own flow, and his own ideas. But those ideas kept getting filtered. Everything had to fit Butterfly's vision. Interviews would get cut short if Doodlebug tried to go off script. Management only cared about pushing the Butterfly aesthetic. And Ladybug Mecca? Oh, she was the mystery, the muse, the moment. Fans loved her, but behind closed doors, she was barely getting any say. There were whispers that she wanted more writing credit, more creative freedom, but the label saw her as the girl in the group, an accessory, not a partner. And inside the group, things weren't much better. People forget, in the early 90s, being a woman in hip-hop wasn't just rare. It was punishing. Ladybug wasn't just dealing with the label's weird energy. She was trying to exist in a trio where decisions were being made without her input. She started pulling back. Press runs, rare. Solo interviews, almost non-existent. Her silence wasn't mysterious. It was calculated. And then came the money. Tour splits, back-end royalties, publishing percentages. It got awkward fast. Butterfly was getting extra checks for production. He was listed as the lead writer. And slowly, it became clear. The business side of Digable Planets was not equal. That's when the group dynamic shifted from we to me. Butterfly began doing solo sessions. Ladybug took outside meetings. Doodlebug started thinking about his own brand. So when the second album didn't blow up, nobody fought to hold the group together. Why would they? The bond was gone. And yet the world never saw the cracks. Because no one talked. No interviews. No press leaks. No open beef. But years later, when they tried to reunite, that silence spoke volumes. Because whatever happened between those three, it never got resolved. And no one proved that more than Ladybug Mecca. She didn't just walk away, she disappeared. And fans started asking, did she leave or was she pushed out? Ladybug Mecca wasn't just the heart of Digable Planets. She was the style, the soul, the reason fans stayed hooked. Her voice was smooth but sharp, calm but commanding. She was instantly iconic, effortlessly cool, and low-key revolutionary. And then she vanished. After Digable Planets split in the mid-90s, Ladybug Mecca didn't drop a solo album. She didn't go on a press tour. She didn't start beef. She just ghosted. No one could figure it out. There were whispers, rumors, Reddit threads. Some fans thought she'd retired. Others said she was blacklisted by the label. A few even claimed she had a secret fallout with Butterfly that was so intense they weren't speaking. But here's what made her disappearance really strange. She never explained it. While Butterfly went on to create Shabazz Palaces and give interviews about his next chapter, and Doodlebug toured indie circuits as See Knowledge, Ladybug was silent. Not a diss track, not a tell-all, nothing. In an industry where everyone's clout chasing, Ladybug dipped like she owed the public nothing, and maybe she didn't. But fans were still confused. Why would the most recognizable member of the group walk away at the height of her influence? Here's the theory that stuck. She was fed up with being sidelined by the label, fed up with being treated like the token female in a male-led group, fed up with having no creative control in a group where she was literally the breakout star. And let's be real, being a woman in hip-hop has never been easy, especially when you're not over-sexualized, not co-signed by a bigger artist, and not willing to play the industry's fake empowerment games. Ladybug was too cool, too quiet, and too uncompromising for the machine. But here's the plot twist nobody saw coming. She came back. Years later, she resurfaced, not as a solo rap star, but as a collaborator in a Brazilian hip-hop project called Brookzil, with Prince Paul and Don Newkirk. Then she started doing voiceover work, commercials, even cartoon characters. She wasn't chasing fame. She was reclaiming her space, on her terms. And still, no major interviews, no memoirs, no docuseries. It's like she took the industry's silence and flipped it right back on them. No drama, no noise, just gone. And Ladybug, she was already gone, still doing her own thing, still not talking. The comeback wasn't just underwhelming, it was awkward. It exposed how little they resolved, how far apart they'd drifted, and how much they'd outgrown the image the world had frozen them in. So when fans asked, why don't Digable Planets ever get the respect they deserve? The real answer was simple. They never stayed together long enough to earn it. And by 2025, the legacy, still complicated, still fractured, still unfinished, which brings us to where they all are now and why the story still feels incomplete. So here we are, 2025, 3 decades since Digable Planets dropped Reachin', and the trio that once shifted the sound of hip-hop is basically frozen in time. No new album, no anniversary documentary, no Verzu's appearance, no biopic, just a trail of solo efforts, cryptic interviews, and a mountain of unrealized potential. Ishmael Butterfly Butler, now in his mid-50s, reinvented himself as Khalilah-Azraa, the shadowy mastermind behind Shabazz Palaces. He's still dropping music, still experimenting, and still avoiding nostalgia at all costs. Critics love his work. He's got underground clout. And in 2025, he's more respected in indie alt spaces than in mainstream hip-hop circles. He's also a creative executive at Sub Pop Records, mentoring the next generation. But he never really circles back to Digable. It's Like That chapter's sealed shut. Estimated net worth, around $800,000 to $1.2 million, largely from his Sub Pop position, indie royalties, and publishing rights from Digable's brief but impactful run. He's not rich, but he's comfortable. And more importantly, in control. Then there's Craig Doodlebug Irving, aka See Knowledge. He stayed the most visible out of the 3, touring small venues, doing community events, even teaching workshops. But let's be honest, he's struggled to move the needle solo. Without Digable's name recognition or label backing, his projects never really broke out. He's respected, sure, but more as a remember him than a chart threat. His estimated net worth in 2025? Somewhere between $150,000 to $300,000. Enough to keep the music going, but nowhere near the legacy payout he probably deserves. He's still releasing music under See Knowledge and the Cosmic Funk Orchestra, and doing occasional festival gigs. And Ladybug Mecca? Still the enigma. She pops up here and there, in niche collaborations, experimental hip-hop circles, voice acting work, but she's never fully stepped back into the spotlight. And that seems to be by design. She's carved out a life beyond hip-hop, which might be the boldest move of all. No clout chasing, no Twitter rants, no tell-all memoir. She left, stayed gone, and refused to be boxed in by a moment the industry wouldn't stop replaying. Her estimated net worth in 2025, around $500,000, thanks to indie royalties, sync licensing, voice work, and occasional performances with niche acts like Brookzill and the trio, still distant. As of 2025, there's no talk of another reunion. No Instagram lives, no surprise performances, no birthday shoutouts. Just mutual silence. And maybe that's the legacy. Digable Planets didn't crash and burn. They faded with dignity. But that dignity came with a cost. No modern-day flowers, no Spotify algorithm love, no Netflix special, a Grammy, a gold plaque, a cult following, and a question that still lingers. What could have been if they'd actually stayed cool like that?